This is too loud, but it's not going to work. Guys, Ben, let me take this. This is just going to be too much back. So I heard you got hurt.
I did. I'm coming along. Before we get started, I want to thank you all for being here today. It's not often that we get to have the ear of the senator to be here, and so we're hoping for some good talks and discussions. Before I introduce him formally, I do want to introduce our Councilman Chris Bott, who's here today, Councilman Jay Savage. We also have Billy Joe Tarr, who's the Accomack County Supervisor, represents us. We've got Joanne and Cynthia from the Chamber, and we're just glad to have everybody here today. So without further ado, Senator Warner, all you.
Thank you. Can I interrupt for 1 second? Do you think we could possibly start this meeting with a pledge of allegiance?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Somehow.
Can everyone stand, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good idea, sir.
Yes, very good idea. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Denise. Thank you so much. It's great to be back in Accomack County. It's great to be back in Chincoteague. And what's particularly great, this is my last event before Memorial Day. So, you've now seen me with my official politician garb. Can I take my chance? Boy, oh boy, oh boy. Thank you, everybody. I was just down in Northampton County where we had an event as well. If you don't mind, I'm going to stand up front. Is that okay? You know, I'm one of those man of peace. So, thank you all so much for coming out. I see a lot of friends. I even see John Jones. So, it's great to see you, John. Boy, oh boy, what a wild time. I was honored to be governor of Virginia. Still the greatest job ever. You know, I'm proud to be your senator for 16 years now. And, before that, I was a business guy and all this stuff. But these last 120 days, oh yeah. and so what I want to do today is for a politician, I'm going to try to be as brief as possible. Although you can clock me and see how long that turns into or not turns into. And then I want to hear what's on your mind. This is a challenging time. I think we're going to get through it. But it's probably been the toughest time since I've been in public service. So, 2 or 3 things off the top. One, probably first and foremost, because this will have the most effect of folks in the county and, frankly, on the shore, for that matter, across the state and the country, is what is being proposed that's just come out of the House in terms of this legislation. And, I think what's come out of the House right now is an example of what happens when we have partisan-only legislation. I am reflexively bipartisan. Probably made some of you mad because I keep trying to work with my Republican friends. But it's mostly because if you pass bills with just one team, you always kind of screw it up. And then both sides don't own how you come back and fix it. And Lord knows, this thing that just came out of the House is going to need a lot of fixing. And I believe, a lot of my Republican Senate friends, I am committed to working with to see if we can improve it. But let me go through on some of the kind of top line things that I think will affect the county. The legislation, I unfortunately, is going to add a couple $1 trillion to the debt, and we're already at 36.5 trillion. I remember back under Obama, I tried to put my first gang together. It was called the Simpson Bowles Gang about the debt, and we thought, oh my God, the debt's going to be 17 trillion. The world's going to melt down. You know, and both parties have been guilty of raising it more, but this is going to add, depending on cut 3 to 4 trillion to the debt. We've already seen the bond markets start to say, well, yeah, with that much money we owe, people are less and less willing to buy our debt, which is the treasury bills. And if people don't show up to buy that, that just means interest rates are going to go up. And interest rates will go up on mortgages, car loans, the cost of borrowing for a community. And I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned as well, and you know, the truth is, we need a lot of reform in our healthcare system, but the current bill, and I think that the Senate will change it, will take about 13 million Americans off of healthcare, off of Medicaid. And some people will say, well, Medicaid, that's it for poor people. You know, candidly, it's not. 40% of our kids in Accomack County are on Medicaid. My fear is, you know, not just say on the shore, but rural hospitals are going to get squeezed at a level that's unprecedented. And that'll affect services. I mean, we are already seeing wide parts of Virginia where you're going to drive 150 miles to deliver a baby. And we could see that even become worse. What will also happen out of this bill is that if you are the part of Virginians, and let me acknowledge, you know, Obamacare was kind of a mess on how we got it started, and it's had plenty of bumps, but there is, you know, a large number of Virginians who get their health care through what's called the marketplace. Again, not perfect, but one of the things that has not been publicized very much, because they're cutting out the tax credits, if you get your health insurance through the marketplace, the estimate was if you make roughly, if you're family of four, you make $80,000 a year and you're buying off the marketplace, you'll see your healthcare rates go up $800 to $900 a month. And that part, like people don't talk about the Medicaid costs, what they've not been talking about is what happens to people who buy on the exchange. So, you know, and that hits to a lot of our small businesses. That's where a lot of folks have said, well, you know, I got a small business, I can't afford to put, you know, buy a big package, so I'm going to go to the exchange. And candidly, we've even got, and, you know, and Lord knows we need reform, because there are some of our companies that now, especially some more big retailers, that manipulate both what they pay people and their schedule, so they keep them on Medicaid so the company doesn't provide health insurance. And you know, that's something we ought to reform, but not this approach. We've also seen cuts to the SNAP program. You know, frankly, I think most Americans want our kids to go to school not on an empty stomach, and unfortunately, that will be cut. And they're even cutting food banks. So I think there are ways that we could do smarter cuts. I mean, frankly, I actually used to work with Elon Musk a dozen years ago on some things, smart guy. And the idea of an actual government efficiency that was smart would have been great. I could give you a dozen ways, especially on defense spending, we'd save money. But coming in with a chainsaw is not very smart. Two other quick items that are relevant to the community, and then I'll open it up for any kind of question, comment, suggestion. If you just are mad and you want to yell, that's okay too. Is that, you know, America, and you think about this area, you know, we are so blessed to have wallops. The only reason we have wallops is because America's been a leader in innovation. And unfortunately, not only are we seeing potentially massive cuts to NASA, but we're seeing cuts to medical research and things that just doesn't make sense. I mean, my mom had a pretty serious case of Alzheimer's. 11 years, my dad took care of her. My dad and sister took care of her for 9 years. I'm concerned about Alzheimer's. They're cutting a 10-year study at year 7. It's like flushing the toilet on all the money that has already been spent. So I think there are this whole area, I am worried about, potential cuts to WALFs. I've met the new guy that the president has put forward as the head of NASA. I actually think, compared to many of the people the president put forward, I think he's a good, good young man. I think he's smart. I think he's political. But we, I think about all the times, like from the bridge, we've had to deal with all these things at WALFs. We gotta keep that support. And I guess the final point I just want to make, because I know that, and this is not just a challenge here in the town or in the county, but we got to find a way to get more affordable housing and just housing supply. And the last thing I want to do in front of local governors tell folks how to do housing supply, because it's controversial. But I'm a big supporter of the historic tax credits. We've got a new one on historic rural tax credits that would be important. YTech, some of the programs that are helpful. I'm supportive of. I'm actually looking at, there's a really cool notion, it wouldn't be completely applicable here in Accomack. And over in Henrico County, what they've done is they took a really controversial issue, like data centers, which are, people like the revenue but hate the noise, but they said all of the data centers in Henrico, they're going to dedicate all the tax revenue, $65 million a year, which is more than what the whole state spends on affordable housing. And it goes into a local land bank and housing trust fund. And so again, this wouldn't be applicable. This is the kind of, I think, creative thinking we need to look more at, where the county's actually going out and buying some of the underlying land. And then if you build right kind of affordability mix, the county will waive all the sewer connect fees and all the permitting fees and get the permitting done in 10 days. So it's just kind of an interesting idea that I think we need more of. Frankly, on housing, we need a lot of new ideas. I'm also working on a notion, we got more houses of worship around Virginia, churches, synagogues, mosques, you name it, that would like to build, affordable housing on some of their land, because we've got a lot of congregations where we've got a diminishing population, diminishing congregation, and the idea of taking some of the land for affordable housing. I'm looking at that. And so I guess the opening comment I want to make to y'all is, I'm sure there'll be a lot of frustrations, but I am absolutely committed to, fighting against the things I don't like, but we just can't say no. We've got to be willing to say, how do we roll up our sleeves and actually acknowledge in some of these areas there are problems, but there's got to be a smarter way than what has been proposed so far. And, there are, I think the House of Representatives is sometimes crazy no matter which party's in control. Spoken like a true senator. But, there are a lot of good people from both political parties in the Senate that I'm proud to work with. I mean, again, I make the joke that I'm working the only place in America where being a gang member is a good thing, because anytime there's a bipartisan group, it's called a gang. What I just fear, though, is the people on the extremes are pushing out those good people in both parties. And particularly if you go into Memorial Day weekend and we think about sacrifices of our parents, grandparents, or others who fought to keep our country free and democratic. We got to recommit ourselves, and I'm preaching to the choir if you're here. But I have never felt so many things in terms of our basic Constitution, due process, rule of law. I'm still maybe old-fashioned. I still think like Canada's a friend and Russia's an enemy. I know that's old-fashioned, but and frankly, if we don't, there's a lot of tourism dollars comes from Canada. So we just got to commit ourselves to a little less screaming and a little more rolling up our sleeves and trying to figure out a way to get things fixed. So I thank all of you for a politician, for like an old senator. That's pretty good for a short opening. The floor is now open. Open season. Questions, comments, suggestions, criticisms. Who wants to start?
I'll let them start.
Yes, sir.
Thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
always like, thanks for being here, and then the next word is going to be,
But, well, actually, the next word after that is, but Jen Kiggins won't be here. And that's very frustrating. But my question for you is, well, actually I have dozens, but I'll start with one. Why do you think, I've come to calling the Republican Party the party of cruelty. It seems like so many of their policies and ideas are just full of cruelty. Why do you think so many Republicans, and I'm leaving this message at Jen's office 5 times a week, why are Republicans voting for things that are cruel and or unethical and or immoral? Are they afraid? Is it just to keep their jobs? Or do they really believe that hurting the poor and the disadvantaged and those Jesus calls the least of these, do they really believe those are good things?
well, I'm not sure that's a totally non-biased question.
And it's not.
But here's the thing. Listen, there have been... There are a lot number of things where directionally, trying to get spending under control, we got to deal with. The fact that this plan, though, says if you're making minimum wage and working 2 jobs, your taxes are going to go up 53% overall, and someone like me who's done well, I'm going to save a minimum of about $190,000. That's just not fair. I'm a proud capitalist. I think you do well. I got no problem with people making money, but there ought to be a sense of fairness. And I fear at times that in this moment of in this race to cut, as a business guy, there's a smart way to cut and a stupid way to cut. Unfortunately, I've been bringing the chainsaw. And I have to acknowledge, I'm chair of the Intelligence Committee and now I'm vice chair. And I swear to goodness, I was sure the Republican friends I have working on the committee that they would speak up. Whether it was on Hegseth to the craziness with the classified information, I dare them to come to Virginia Beach, or Norfolk and explain to the families of the sailors on the Truman how that information, if it gotten in the wrong hands, wouldn't have been devastating. Mm-hmm. Or when they fired the head of the NSA, without any reason, or just this week, where we've got actual evidence of somebody who's been put up, this Mr. Kent, who is trying to manipulate the intelligence, to get an outcome. And you start cooking the books on the intelligence, and we're up the creek. But they have not spoken out. I've had a number of my Republican senator friends say, "Oh, Mark, keep talking about this." I even had one of them say, "Mark, you say this, like you're our conscience." And I thought, I don't want to be your damn conscience.
You need to be a conscience.
I do think what has happened, and this is true, particularly with Mr. Musk. I know Republican senators who are going to vote against some of the president's choices, and Mr. Musk goes after you online, and they've had to hire personal security for their kids.
Yeah.
In America, if you're an elected official, the price of being an elected official, and this happens at certain local levels too, shouldn't be that you gotta hire somebody to keep your family safe. And I pray and believe that we're getting closer to them speaking up, but will there be so much damage done in the short run? I mean, suddenly, if we reversed most of these policies, it's still going to be a long time before Canadians start coming back to the Eastern Shore in droves. It's still going to be a long time before somebody says, "Oh gosh, I believe in our veterans and I'm going to go work at the VA." When you've got this terror, we spent 10 years. One of the things that's crazy about the I can give you lots of places where the feds have screwed up, but like this new Veterans Medical Facility in Chesapeake, brand spanking new, but we can't get people to go work there because people are terrified they won't keep their jobs.
Sure.
Yeah.
So that part. Now, let me also say on the other hand, I think, I'm a Democrat and all, but I do think at times the Democrats got way too regulatory. We put in way too many, I've been obsessed about bringing broadband to rural communities. We got, in the infrastructure bill, $42 billion for broadband. luckily, Governor Northam had put some money from a prior batch, so we've got some money being spent, but that 42 billion, of which Virginia was supposed to get 1.4 billion, we didn't spend a mile of that getting laid, or fiber being laid, because we had too many regulations. So there are things, you know, there's a problem on both teams, but this moment now, it is really hard for some of my more moderate Republican friends. I want there to be a strong center-right Republican Party. I want there to be a center-left Democratic Party, and we ought to fight over things, but still figure out ways to work together. But this moment in time is, it's really hard, and it's hard on, you know, I just hope and pray my Republican friends will find their voices. And because they don't, a lot of this stuff, at least in the Senate, they don't believe, but they got to find their voice. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
So, a couple things. Things that have happened recently in the Oval Office, I find embarrassing that a president of the United States would do. Downgrading another government official, President Zelensky, the president from South Africa. That's just not something I want to see in my president. I know there's not much you can do about that. My other question is, I know that coming before you soon will be a bill that has passed the House called the SAVE Act. And if you could, I would like you to talk about that and what that will mean if that goes through. Because that's scary for women.
Well, the SAVE Act is, I don't think they're even going to bring it up. I am absolutely against the SAVE Act. I'll cut through all of the mumbo jumbo. It is a way to try to restrict voting rights, and particularly women.
Yes.
Right.
Any of you women who have the audacity to get married and change your names, you know. And again, this is coming from the team that I thought was pro-family values.
Yeah.
You got to go back and somehow find your birth certificate, and it's.
And you have to pay for it.
And you got to pay for it. You know, it's crazy. It will not pass the Senate. You know, many other things you can worry about because that one still requires 60 votes. It will not pass. On the presidential thing, you know, it's. My goodness. I think about people in the intelligence committee when you're suddenly being told, you know, Russia's our buddy, and you know those bad Australians and Canadians. Zelensky, what the people of Ukraine have done. Many of us in this room are old enough that we grew up. Soviet Union was always the bad guys. How we have to fight. The people of Ukraine, yes, with some of our help, but with also Europe's help, have taken out 87% of Russia's pre-existing ground forces, 63% of their tanks, 32% of their armored personnel carriers, and not a single American soldier or NATO soldier lost their life. And I promise you, I will sit here with virtual certainty, if Putin is able to win in Ukraine, the next will be the Baltic states.
Yes.
And then it'll be Poland. And then the whole question of the post-World War II, and again, the awfulness of this, as we go into Memorial Day, you know, men and women who fought for our country to get rid of autocratic regimes, we will either have our young people potentially in conflict, or there will not be a NATO. And whether it's Putin in Russia or Xi in China, it will be devastating. I mean, America first should not mean America alone.
Right.
That's right.
Exactly.
You know, and that's the part that we are made stronger with having allies. I mean, that was always our advantage against countries like China and Russia. They were bullies, or they had customers, they didn't have allies, and we've managed to offend. That's a family audience. I say piss off if not, but you know, it's pretty remarkable. Yes, sir.
Thank you for coming, Senator Warren.
I'm not going to call out the fact that
I
you're in
know,
Virginia, you got an Orioles hat on.
That's only because I'm a Baltimore. I'm born and raised. I've been here since '76. We've met many times. I was a member of the Accomack County Board of Supervisors
Yes, sir.
for 20 years. Appreciate you being here today. I do have a very local question
Yes,
for
sir.
you. No longer on the board, but I'm now the executive director of the Eastern Sugar Rail Trail Foundation. Your office, I spoke to several of your aides when we made our application for a RAISE grant, and we were awarded $23.5 million to build an 18-mile segment of the trail. The money has been allocated but not obligated. We are still in contact with Federal Highway Administration. It's been several years. We're hoping to sign an agreement by the end of this month. Yesterday, we had a groundbreaking.
Groundbreaking, right?
Yes,
Down in
yes.
Northampton.
You missed it by a day.
Trust me, I'd rather been here at the
I know,
groundbreaking
I know.
than voting on some of the crazy stuff I did.
I contacted Ben, and he contacted me back, letting me know your obligations for yesterday. But the point, we're really concerned that that money could be clawed back. And as you mentioned earlier in your opening and some of your responses, the rail trail goes through 12 old historic railroad towns. When Route 13 was built and you as governor know, bypassed all those towns, and that was the death knell for them.
Yes, sir.
So the trail now would bring back the viability of those towns, revitalize economic development, bring tourists back to the Eastern Shore in droves from Canada, I hope. You know, that's a real concern, and I know it's selfish on me to
No, it's not.
to ask, because
No.
it
I
is
am-
a concern that we could lose that funding.
I am 1,000% in favor. Matter of fact, I'm going to spend the next couple of days biking. You know, I'm a biker and hiker. Not as good as Tim Kaine on the hiking. He's the junior center. But I've seen you know, like there was the Creeper Trail out in Damascus Southwest. It revitalized. And that the trail, I'm going to forget the name of it. Jimmy Carter and others over in the Middle
Silver
Peninsula.
Comet.
Pardon me?
Silver Comet in Georgia?
No, I'm talking about the one over in the Middle Peninsula.
Oh.
And that's we've got a trail that we've been working on for years. I promise to try to get the money, but here's the problem. You know, and this is another worry where I think we could have a constitutional crisis. The Constitution says Congress appropriates money.
Yes.
The president just can't then suddenly say, well, I don't like that. You know, and if you take away Congress appropriations power, why be a member of the Congress or Senate? So it's not just this trail money. You know,
It's all across the
we got all that broadband money. I talked about where the Democrats screwed up on not getting it out fast enough. They held on to all $42 billion. So, you know, if there are more things if there are things that we have not done yet, you know, letters, pressure, whatever, count me in. If there are things from the current, or whatever I can do. I mean, I have seen this is like some economic development, kind of mixed bag, pro and con. Trails, yeah.
It's not partisan.
It's not partisan.
It
It's
helps
also,
too.
those are people that don't just come for a day. They can usually spend the night. They spend money. Yes, I'm on it.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, pretty much along the same lines, only bigger, is all the issues around public lands. And here on Chincoteague, Assateague Island, there have been major cuts to staffing. I'm not sure because I was getting mixed information about this, but I don't think, so correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know that there are going to be lifeguards out there at the recreational beach?
He's here, he's a lifeguard.
Yes?
Yeah.
And you're going to be there?
No,
No.
we don't know.
Yeah.
They'll take us away.
And then, of course, this administration is talking about privatizing, selling, and, you know, the National Park Service and the wildlife refuge, just the entire public land system that we have is one of the most beautiful things that the United States has created, and to have it chainsawed is, you know, again, one more idiotic thing. We're also having trouble with the fee booth people. They have to cut them in half, and they came in very late for training, so it means that they're not even going to be able to collect enough fees, you know, so it's just like you said, it's stupid. I mean, that's not the way to
That's a technical term, by the way.
Yeah.
Appropriate
No,
tech.
but here, like, I will remind you, I hope you will remember,
Yeah.
that there was a certain senior senator, like 6 years ago, birthed a bipartisan Restore Our Parks bill that allowed us, under the first Trump administration, I disagreed with Trump on a lot of things first, but there were rational people to work with. And we got, $8 billion to help do the deferred maintenance on a lot of our national. Now we're trying another one, but when you threaten public lands, I am against that. Without a process, there may be some communities if they want to go through that, but that ought to be an orderly process, not just a dictate from a president. But the thing that makes me, the uncertainty stuff. I mean, the president may be well-intentioned in trying to bring manufacturing jobs back, but nobody's going to move back to America if we've got this total uncertainty. You can leave it. So, I hear you on this. It kind of goes back to the trail. It goes back to the number of programs that have just been frozen, and time is money. I'll make you a 50-cent bet that we can come back in 6 months. At the end of the day, this DOGE effort is going to end up costing taxpayer money, not saving, because there's so many times where people are hired and then be fired, and it's one thing to fire a bunch of coders in Silicon Valley because you can go hire other coders, but you can't fire somebody who's an air traffic controller and hire somebody tomorrow. So it's I'm in violent agreement with it. Yes, young man.
Sorry. I don't even know why I'm here today, but
We do.
this is new to me, but last year I was a Shingatig lifeguard. I was here, and I lifeguarded, and it's my first year as a GS3, and it's a little bit different to not have it, and it was kind of all over the place, but it seems like it's not going to happen. And for me, as somebody who's seen kids who have been lost and broken arms and anything with the water and the tough surf, we're fully expected to go in there. We're fully trained to go in there and get people no matter what. And I'm not Democratic. I'm Republican. I do support Trump, but it's like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to me. Democrat, Republican, is people's lives at stake, and if somebody's life is lost, then it's chaotic. And it doesn't matter as long as I get to go in there. I don't care about the pay as long as So I have a best friend, and we've already been trained, and we're just
They're waiting
anything.
to go. They're ready to go. And there's so many people out there right now. The moms that lose their kids at the beach every day, they go to him thinking he's Spider-Man or something. It doesn't matter.
It looks
what
like
they-
you're in pretty good shape.
He's going Coast Guard after graduation, and he wants to be air and rescue. So this means a lot to him. And I told him, I said, it doesn't matter what party we're in. We all got to work together. We're family as Americans. And my son willing to risk his life to save somebody is very important right now. We're Shingatigers by heart. He was born and raised here. We moved to Greenbackville. Cats go. I'm so sorry. But he's here. He's 18 years old, and I work at NASA with my husband. I've been there 10 years. We know what's going on. We understand what's going on with our president. We understand that. But we're going to stand here and fight both sides and say, Shingatig is coming up on their 100-year anniversary pony swim. We cannot not have lifeguards there, sir. Due respect. He's willing to work with no pay. So is this other lifeguard. We don't have a supervisor because the very best one had to leave to retire. They said it'll take 3 to 4 months to train them. That's all of summer. We're looking at 5,000 plus people, right, Mayor? To that beach with children, people that can't even swim, with diabetes, that are going to go through heat stroke. They need this guy to come over there and help them, or even give them a Band-Aid and say, I'm here for you,
I 100% agree.
Right.
Tell me your name.
Ethan Swift, sir.
Ethan. Mark, nice to see you. But I 100% agree. You know, the idea, and this is where I don't want to play into this gentleman's comment, but there is a little bit of cruelty here
Yes, sir.
Yes.
when they don't just tell you the answer, but just leaving. I'm trying to be. But you're right, and Ethan will, like, we will go back and check again, but what excuse are they giving you?
I mean, I just want the truth, man. Like, I mean, that's simple as that, but like,
But what have they said? Have they basically said, you know, we just don't know where the funds
so I've
are?
already put my application in, and they kind of been very hesitant about it. Like, they're still trying to keep your hopes up. And
They don't know, right?
they don't know themselves, and
But Ethan, you should just know this, and I mean, I know you should say you support the president, but Congress passed this money. It's the law.
Yes,
He's not the king.
right,
no.
He doesn't have the right to say, okay,
Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to get rid of the lifeguards.
Yeah, you
right. You can't.
So I just hope you know, just, you know, you're 18, you vote. Just bear this in mind.
Yes, sir.
You got to hold us all accountable. And when people say they're going to do something, they don't do it. Just remember, I will do everything I can to try to get this money. But I could give you 500 programs like this that in right this moment are on. But I'll take, you know, yes, ma'am.
What advice do you have for us as individuals and representatives of local governments and organizations for how we can be most effective in speaking to issues like all of the ones raised so far today and, as you said, hundreds and thousands of others?
Here's what
What can we best do?
I
Thank
think,
you.
you know, there are 3 or 4 things. You know, a lot of this now is actually being litigated in the courts because, you know, there is a court system. You can't just ignore the law. That's number one. You know, you want to raise your voice in protest? Raise your voice in protest. Whether it's with me or with local representatives, others. I am disappointed so far that this administration, I keep going back to the Intelligence Committee, it's always been 100% bipartisan. You know, under Trump, Mr. Trump's first time, they worked really well. Under this administration, they have had they've had very little outreach even to Republican members, but not to Democrats. I do believe, and I say this with respect to our local elected officials, you know, we've got to urge, you know, our local elected officials, particularly if they're independents or Republicans, to raise their voice too. Because it feels like, you know, we've got to get people to start listening, and unfortunately, it feels like people listen more to people on their own team. And then finally, I think that I'm not like a guy over the top hyperbole, but, you know, this is kind of the time when our system of government is kind of at stake right now. And I would just say you got to be willing to go out and have those hard conversations, you know, with your friends and families and others. But like Ethan just said, they support the president. That's fine, but talk to them about, is this really what, you know, I thought if you supported the president, you wanted a border secure and you wanted lower grocery prices. I don't think you signed up for all of this other stuff. And that's, I think we got to have conversations with people that, you know, that may not agree with us and just say, is there some way we can get to common ground to give this young man or others just some predictability? It would be more fair to say, you know, I wouldn't agree with it. It'd be more fair to say, okay, we're just shutting down the program, than to kind of say, we're going to leave you in limbo. Yes, sir. One of the two gentlemen, young men in the back.
Yeah, I think one of the things we have to confront on Mr. Short is, I think we've done a relatively poor job of selecting and supporting Democratic candidates for Congress. And I've worked on some of this, and I'm scratching my head in terms of what the state party has done and not done. I think Higgins is vulnerable. I say that based on conversations I've had with lifelong Republicans who voted for her last time. And I think we've got to find a candidate. And frankly, I favor nominating Missy because she's now got name recognition. She came close last time. She's got a good profile.
I'm just going to respectfully say, it's not partisan. I'm here as a United States Senator. I work with people on both sides. I would also say this, you know, but I am a Democratic citizen. I think Democrats got to go back to being pro-growth, pro-opportunity, less regulations, you know, more pro-innovation. You know, at some point, you know, there's this constant tension now between, like, our legitimate desire for protection. We need to protect people, but we also got to give people opportunity. And I think sometimes, I'll be critical of my own team, we got the balance a little out of whack. We wanted to be the word police. And we wanted to say, you gotta, like, sure, you gotta have a regulation for X. You know, we need appropriate regulation, but we don't need to go so far over the top that you can't get stuff built. The fact that it is an embarrassment to me that we passed broadband in the first year of Biden administration and no fiber got laid out. That's on my team. We could have a separate session on the other session. Yes, please.
Well, first of all, I'm going to say thank you for being here, but I will be so presumptuous as to say we really want you to do more. And specifically, a lot of us in this room work with the Hispanic and Haitian communities on the shore. ICE has already made it very clear that even in rural health, where urgency rooms were sacrosanct, no more. I'm proud to be a member of the faith community that is suing the Trump administration for ignoring or abusing the whole concept of sanctuary. You're talking about the courts. I don't think we're on the edge of a constitutional crisis. I think we're knee-deep in it.
Yes.
We already know that there have been court orders that have been ignored. Due process has been thrown out the window. And quite frankly, the court's decisions are enforced by the Justice Department, who are just calling all these judges radical left-wing, etc. Specifically, what is the Democratic Party doing to make sure that these court orders are followed and carried out, and that we really adhere to the Constitution?
A couple of times. One.
It doesn't have to be just one party. What is Congress?
Well, Congress,
that's
that's
the balance of power.
Folks, you know,
That's what's happening. We've lost the pedestals. They've been kicked out from under us, and there's the balance. There is no balance.
we changed, and this is the Democrats, we changed the rules 10 years ago, frankly, to undermine the filibuster. Many of you probably hate the filibuster, but the filibuster is the thing when you're in the minority that keeps the country from going wacky either way. We wouldn't have this Supreme Court if we had had a requirement for 60 votes on the Supreme Court. You know, but with the what we have right now is we can litigate, we can protest, or you can, you know, I get grief, and some of you probably completely disagree with me. Don't work with them at all. Well, the only way our system works is if I can try to, I don't need to convince 30 Republicans, I need to convince 4.
And you can't do that.
Well, respectfully, I'm not giving up. And I tell you this. Yes, sir. I had a call, you know this a long time, but I had a call with 55 Latino pastors and priests the other day. You talk about feeling, holy heck. You know, people are afraid to go to church.
Yes.
Afraid to go to school, afraid to go to doctor. I don't believe, and again, maybe I'm naive, but if this was a room of folks that were completely for the president, I just don't believe that Americans, you know, they might want to change on the board, but I don't believe the vast majority of people who supported President Trump really want masked people coming grabbing people off the street without any due process.
No way. I don't think
So what I'm trying to do right now is, you know, and this is just kind of as a whatever convening power of the Senate, is to try to make sure, you know, every church that's got a big, you know, immigrant community, we create a phone tree so that if somebody comes, you immediately know who else to call. So, candidly, we need to have churches that are more majority church, you know, kind of have a partnership with a minority church to kind of say, if ICE shows up on your doorstep, let's have other people from the community show up, because I think some of these people, name and shame, we're trying to put together a toolkit of what are the resources you can turn to. I'm looking to make sure that immigration lawyers are not jacking up their prices during this period. You know, I feel the answers I'm giving you, I don't feel satisfied with these answers. But we live in a democracy, and unless I can get, 4 of my Republicans or 5 of them just say, guys, you don't believe in this. We don't need to have the most MAGA people in the world come out. We just need responsible people to vote their conscience. And
But we're losing the democracy. I'm watching him break laws,
Yes.
and nothing is done.
Right.
Yes, it goes before the courts, but there is his right.
Because
So
he's got
every
immunity.
last night he had a dinner where all kinds of people paid all kinds of money to come and they're giving him a plane. And we all sit there and go, this is a democracy. He's a king.
He's wearing him down.
Right, it's against the law, but he does it.
Yeah, it's against the law.
it is against the law. It's also, there's something in the Constitution called the Emoluments Clause. But listen, please, they, on the case, the Supreme Court, I thought got only 90% of the way there on the guy that got taken outside. We need one of these where they do 100%, there's no lack of clarity. I do think that some of the men and women I work with, there's almost really like 3 parties in Congress. There's the Democrats, Republicans, and then the people called the appropriators, because they get to decide kind of where they're getting totally their knees cut off. I do believe, Trump, what he was going to do, he was going to try to come back and do something called a rescission, where all of these cuts, he was going to try to get Congress to bless them. They won't put that bill up because they know the Republicans won't vote for it. So I just got to keep nudging, haranguing, harassing, convincing, whatever it takes. Your comment on the immigrant communities and the fear they're in, I think we're better people for that. We can agree about what the border need to be, but the border being, that doesn't give you license to take people off the streets.
No way.
Sir?
Now, I'm an employer,
Yes, sir.
and in order for me to hire, say, one of these illegals that came into the country 10 years ago,
Yes, sir.
I have to give them, my accountant says I have to have identification, social security, the whole 9 yards. Neither did the state of Virginia will give them a driver's license. I talked with Linwood Lewis when he had his time meetings. He said it's a federal issue. But yeah, neither Democrat nor Republican. What we're doing between the parties is throwing them on the Medicaid, the Medicare, the SNAP, because you won't make provisions for them to legally get a job.
And
And it puts some employers will abuse them, just because they're illegal. But if you would make it legal, maybe that would help clean up some of these other benefits.
Well, that's, amen. And having a legal work permit program is a smart thing. We have some of this. I mean, every year I go through a battle on H-2B for seafood workers. I remember, and again, let me go ahead and hit the Democrats again so I can show equal opportunity. I remember first year of Obama, and picking crabs is a hard job. And the Obama Labor Department came in and said, well, can't you hire college kids? No college kid in March or April is going to pick crabs for $9 an hour. And so you are right. This is the thing where, last year on a border bill, very conservative guy, James Langford, worked his tail off. He had a pretty darn good bill.
Yes.
A number of years back, I voted for comprehensive immigration reform that John McCain helped sponsor. This issue has gotten so toxic. But as an employer, I know as just looking at the data, we need a legal system. We need to make sure people don't get rewarded for coming here illegally and people wait their turn. But the actual truth is, you know, if somebody comes as a young worker, they're gonna pay into all, they're paying into, you know, things like Social Security, but the money gets taken. And we gotta have some of these workers in the legal system. It has been on the long list of like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we're still arguing about the same damn thing. You know, and it would have, this is again, it will take, in the way our politics are right now, it would take a brave Republican to take the lead on immigration reform. The same way it took Nixon to go to China. And there are those members, but they are terrified at this point by.
Couldn't it be a brave Democrat?
Oh, listen, I got immigration reform bill. I can show you exactly what the program I think we should do. It's not, you know, and I endorse it. It would include things like a quicker path to citizenship for dreamers, people who were brought here as kids. It would say going forward, let's make sure this program called TPS, Temporary Protective Service, it needs reform. But we shouldn't take somebody who got here in 1991 from El Salvador and say now, 35 years later, we're going to kick you out. So there couldn't be reform going forward. I can send you chapter and verse, but it's not gonna get to the point without some bipartisanship. And we do need identification. I know you're going through all these hoops, but with the ability we now have with artificial intelligence and other documents, we should be able to know identities of people that people are not. There should be an employee validation, whether it's the Real ID program or others. We could haggle over that, but there needs to be a validation program. But there are a lot of people that think, you know, this. I just don't believe the premise that if you suddenly kick everybody out overnight, one, it's going to crater the economy, but two, you're going to suddenly have a bunch of Americans fill these.
Yeah, right. No,
it's just
I'm going to go pick tomatoes.
Yeah, it's just, let me make sure I'll try to go quicker. Yes.
Yes, Senator Moore, thanks for being here. And I came here so peaceful about what's happening in our country. I wake up every morning sick to my stomach, trying to find out what happened overnight, what's happening during the course of the day. And you said your Republican colleagues in the Senate need to jump on board. You look at what happened in the House. 2 weeks ago, this bill isn't going to pass, this bill isn't going to pass. 4 or 5 congressmen aren't going to do it, Trump and his henchmen hammer those people until they give him what he wants. So this budget bill is a simple majority. The way it's set up, it's a simple majority. And you said, I understand they're afraid of their family. I understand they're being threatened. But what about the people in this whole God's darn country that are being threatened by the Constitution and the violation of it and the violation of the law of order? How are you going to get 4 cowardice congressmen to join you? That's where I don't see how that's going to happen, and that bill is going to go through because they just need this simple majority.
I think here's why I feel. I've been coming to the shore a long, long time. There are very few times on a Friday before Memorial Day I get 100 people in a room. I was in, Smith County in far southwest. This 9th district voted for President Trump by 72%. I had 140 people at 10:30 in the morning in Marion, Virginia. Something is happening around the country. But what we have to do is not just come in with no. We have to come out and convince folks, and again, I don't want to blame my local officials, but our state legislators and others to say, guys, you may be a Republican and supportive of the president, but this is not good for Virginia. This is not good for the shore. We need those voices too. It just feels to me, because just one last thing, it almost feels like Mr. Trump, it is amazing, I got to give him credit on this, how anytime he turns everything into turning himself into a victim. How do you somehow identify enough with young black men and young Hispanic men? It's like, I understand your pain because I've been a victim too. I mean, it is. So I do think we have to get, some of our community.
And when you won, I said 4 years is a long time. Okay, we have to look at the midterm. But right now, I don't know where we're going to be at the midterm. Where is this country going to be at the midterm?
The thing, 250 years next year. This country, we are, and anyone who believes we're not going to make it, I completely disagree with. We are a better people and a better country. But we've got to do a little bit of this with, I'm not asking for over-the-top empathy or being naive, but we can't view people who disagree with us or support the president as somehow the enemy. That's what the extremes want. The extremes want us to be pitted against each other where we won't talk to each other. And that would be the demise of our democracy. But let me take a couple ideas. We got a shy, retiring crowd here, so I'm going to do lightning round answers.
Okay, well, to your point, I think part of what has created this polarization and this, not talking to each other is that we're not living in a fact-based world anymore. And that's why we're cutting off science programs and clinical studies, in the middle, when anyone who's a scientist understands what crazy it is. And one of the existential crises that we haven't talked about yet is the climate. We're sitting here on an island that if you go out 30 to 50 years won't be here. If we don't do something now, we can't wait 4 years or 2 years. And they're cutting these programs as we speak. Representative Kiggins, who said she would not vote against solar, just voted against solar. And I don't see us being able to just hold our breaths for 4 years and hope that we can change the regime, because we can't let go of the progress that has been made and needs to be made even faster.
And my two quick responses would be one, if we never mention the word climate change again, and we just say your home insurance prices are going to go up because sea level rise, I'll call it man in the moon. I don't care.
Your property taxes will go down because your property values will go down.
Because if we make the argument based on just the fact of homeowners insurance going up because of rising sea level, let's not call it whatever. Call it whatever we can agree on that people don't want their resource to go up. But let me also quickly, I should just shut up now. I'm all for solar and wind, but I also think, for example, if we think about the competition around artificial intelligence and how we're going to power all this, we've got to bring nuclear back into the mix. Small modular nukes, they are carbon free. I believe they are, the technology has advanced a great deal. And I would just argue, and this is where we can, you can throw rocks at me. We can't just say it's going to be only solar and wind. We've got to realize we've got to be open to new solutions too.
Absolutely,
yes,
but we can't cut back what we've already been doing.
Amen. Like the fact I was terrified they were going to pull the permit on the offshore wind after we've already spent $6 billion so far.
50-year business center here on Chincoteague, and
you couldn't be at 50 years.
Family-owned business. I lived there for 40 years.
No, you're good.
We depend on Assateague Island. I do, a lot of people in this room do counsel the town, depends on Assateague Island being open. And when I hear talk of federal lands being sold, it scares me to death. And it scares me for the town, it scares me for my staff and my business and everybody else's business on Chincoteague. What do you think?
I think in terms of East Coast stuff, that is not going to happen, number one. Number two, I'm not even going to weigh in on some of the controversy back in Utah and some of these other areas where, President Biden or President Obama moved people into public lands and they're fighting back and forth. I would agree we ought to preserve those public lands as well, but at least there's an argument both ways because it was recent action. things like acetate, that is not in that category. And I think what's happened is, this is like these Doge boys. They came out and they put up stuff. And they've had no adult supervision and trying to make some of these comments. They literally posted a bunch of properties. Some of them were secret CIA spy houses. So we've wasted money there. Because once those are exposed, where it's like, cost us $340,000 to train a CIA agent. And you fire the young ones, nobody's going to join. I don't, I hear you on this, stay honest, but I do not believe that even this crowd would take an acetate and suddenly say we're going.
We're talking about a land developer as our president.
Yes, ma'am, and then here, please.
Given your 16 years of experience in the U.S. Senate and your history of working in a bipartisan manner, what do you expect or predict will be the outcome of this budget reconciliation bill that has just been switched to the Senate side? Can you keep saying you only need 4 Republicans to switch. Do you have buddies, 4 buddies who you're predicting? Or
there was
you're
not,
gonna name names?
There was not. There was,
what I have read up to now is that the Republicans in the Senate are going to do even deeper cuts, and the deeper cuts to programming to try and lessen the deficit. They're not going to stop the tax cuts for the rich. They're going to continue those. They want those.
Well, I think there are a number that are particularly concerned about Medicaid. I think the bill will change. Will we be able to entirely stop it? I can't look in the eye and say, I got 4 votes in my pocket. I tell you this, is I know who my target audience is. What we can't do, and this gets into the political realm again, we can't expect Susan Collins to carry the water on every bill. So we have to get some of the others to kind of be willing. So I'm going against my team right now on some of this, like crypto stuff. I think you need rules. It's hard to go against your team. And, it's the way we did, the whole way we did everything under Biden that actually got done, the infrastructure bill, the CHIPS bill, the veterans bill, most of the stuff that came out of the IRA. The only reason those happened, it wasn't because it went through the normal, how a bill becomes a law. It was because there were like 10 of us, usually 5 Ds and 5 Rs, and we trusted each other. There's not been a bipartisan bill that I've not been in the middle of that Mitt Romney or I were not the ones buying the dinner. Mitt Romney's quit. So I'm not. But I got my targets, but I can't look you in the eye and give you 100% assurance. I promise you, I will do everything I possibly can, and my hope would be, and I'm not going to call out names of the press, but you can look at any list. I can, everyone knows the audience of the 8 or 9. If you got friends in Maine or Indiana or Franklin, Missouri, there's a lot, Alaska, there's a lot of places where I think they just need to hear, they frankly need to hear. I'm more and more of a belief that if they can also hear from local Republican elected officials or state legislators, that may open up more than
Change their minds a little.
people who are simply viewed as, Democratic activists. I don't believe everybody in this room is a Democratic activist. Where the hell have you been over the last 20 years? Let me go back to this young man over here.
I've heard, first of all, thank you for coming out to giving this time here. But I've heard that the bill, and I don't know how this can be true in a budget bill, but that it includes provisions that would draw the jurisdiction over contempt charges from the U.S. courts. And of course, doing that would take away the ultimate power of the courts to cause the Trump administration to do anything. The courts couldn't force funding to be released for lifeguards on Assateague or for the Coast Guard or for anything else that the king might want to cut.
Yeah, I have heard that too. I need to see, but this, I'll give you 30 seconds of one of the things I love being governor because you get to drive the bus. You know, now I'm kind of on the bus. It depends on which week, whether I'm in the front seat or the back seat. But so I don't know legislative process that well. But the only way they can skip the 60 vote margin is by something called reconciliation. Reconciliation goes back to a bill that was passed in the mid-70s that was supposed to be an extraordinary measure to actually lower the deficit. And it had to be, the whole bill was supposed to be only about cutting the debt and deficit. So there's this whole set of arcane rules that is called, named after Robert Byrd, the senator from West Virginia. It's called the Byrd bath you have to go through. You can't make this stuff up, young man. This is how it works. That has to say, does this make, actually debt cutting? That would have nothing to frickin' do with the debt. But then the problem is, just because I should just stop there, the person who makes that determination, the referee, is the parliamentarian. And the parliamentarian is a lady, Elizabeth McDonough, who managed to really make the Democrats mad because both parties have used this. When the Democrats tried to use it, she threw out things like raising the minimum wage. Probably many of us, including me, want to raise the minimum wage, but it was not appropriate to the bill. So we've got to count on her and then count on them not saying, screw it, and we're going to overturn the parliamentarian. So it comes back again to me and others getting the 4 or 5 to say, no. And examples, I'm going to take this.
Just fire her then and put someone in place that will do whatever.
Excuse me, you don't get a follow-up question. I'm going to take 1 or 2 more, get out of your hair, because then it's, yes, sir.
Okay, I'm an Arab American, Lebanese American, and thank you for somebody asking a question earlier, which answered my question about if I travel overseas and I come to the airport here, will I be not allowed to come to the U.S. And you just answered that. That's from what I understood. But I just want to make a comment. I have family members, and I have friends, I have neighbors who are Republicans, and I talk with them. I don't see them to be cool. I just see them to be much educated. 50% of them, they don't watch the news. They're telling me right now we regret that we voted for Trump. They regret that they voted for this Republican or that Republican. And I told them, how come you didn't watch the news? Was we watch, either Fox or other site? How can we educate the other half of our society to know the truth and forget MSNBC, forget CNN? We need to go something different. We need to go either in person or go to a helicopter and throw some paper debris, do something a little bit to educate. We love them. They are our family. They are our half of the society, but we need to educate them.
And God bless you for asking. And the truth is, MSNBC doesn't give you all of the sides. So the thing is, it's much worse than you think. It's only about 35% of Americans now that read any news or watch any news. More of our kids get news off of TikTok than anything else. One of the reasons why I'm terribly concerned that the Communist Party of China can manipulate what our kids see. I probably get more attention now. I give press conferences all the time. I get on TV a lot. But I get much more attention based upon what I do on Instagram and YouTube and all of these channels. I don't know how to fix that. Only thing I can say is, we need to get our voice out. And most people don't even want to talk about politics. So what I'm trying to do is, I mentioned I'm going to be bike riding. I'm a biker. I'm trying to get on the biking blogs. My most famous time ever on social media. And if any of you have 2.5 minutes of your life that you want to waste, Google Mark Warner tuna melt. Because I did, in the first month of COVID, I made the grossest tuna melt ever. I got more appearances on that than any immigration 14-foot provision. So we can either curse this or we can say we got to meet people where they are. And one of the things I think that the Democrats have done, and I'm trying to be better. It's easy to, people are going to say, this guy's bashing the Democrats. I can bash the other side, but I'm trying to be fair and balanced, or whatever the word is. Yeah, but we got to meet people culturally. And I think sometimes, I mean, I remember when I ran for governor, I sponsored a NASCAR truck, I had a bluegrass band, I had Sportsman for Warner. I didn't change my views, but I said I'm going to respect you culturally. And I do think sometimes there has been an elitist attitude from some folks on this team. And so how you, but we can't give up. It's 2:30. I'm going to release you shortly. I would just implore you. I want to thank the town. I want to thank our local elected officials. I want to thank the chamber for things you kind of said about coming in and out of the country. You know, one of the great things about our secret sauce is it's the only country in the world where you can come and first generation be American. Yes. Yes. You know, I could move to Italy tomorrow. I'm never going to be Italian. And it breaks my heart when I think about, they're trying to now say, Harvard, whatever university, can't have foreign students. The number of inventions and the amount of our economy growth that have come from immigrants.
This country was founded by immigrants.
We're all like Native Americans, immigrants, and having a rational immigration and work program. But please, I mean, the country is worth fighting for. You're here, I'm preaching to the choir. But don't throw in the towel. Hold me. I'm going to try my 6 or 8. Hey, I'll even move to Bourbon if it takes it to Bourbon. but I implore all of you, yes, get in my face and others, but also have those hard conversations with Ethan and his pals and say, guys, I know you maybe like some of the things that President Trump represents, but
hey,
don't shoot him in the
Republicans
job.
come out to see the Democrats. Some of us are okay.
I know.
I'm raising it right. We don't hate you. Some of us do not hate you. We want to be like Reagan, and we want to work things out with everybody. We want to be a nation with everybody.
And that's why I'm just saying, though, if we
Sorry
can
for
go
it,
back
what
to
he's
the
doing.
sense that we got a hell of a lot more that we agree on.
Yeah.
And we are the greatest country in the world. And we
Right,
are the strongest country in the world. And we're made stronger when we stick to our rules and laws. And but I will also acknowledge to those I can feel your angst. I go back to the one gentleman who, I guess, drove out of the, no, he's still here. The call I had with the Hispanic faith leaders broke my heart. Broke me out. Why can't I do more to let these folks feel safe going to church? That should not be a big ask. So I hear your frustration, but we got one of the ways that we express is, we're the first state that's going to give, in effect, from the political standpoint, a grade, because we got the governor, the lieutenant governor, attorney general, and the House of Delegates. So one of the ways is exercise, obviously, your vote there. But please just as angry, as frustrated, let's keep the anger and frustration at some of the perpetrators and not try to pretend that everybody who supported this, I don't believe in my heart at all that the vast majority of folks who supported President Trump believe in some of these policies that are cruel. And if we can find that common ground, or kind of make peace over a cup of coffee or a glass of wine, we'll get through this. But it's going to be tough. It's the last 120 days. I was governor, senator. I'm going to ask you guys to hire me one last time. It's been the hardest time I've ever had in public life. But it's worth the fight.
Does that mean you don't want to be our president?
No, I don't want to be our president. But I also want to make sure, candidly, this will probably be, again, if Mr. Trump goes down, and then I don't want the Democrats to go off wild left either. So, I'm at least equal opportunity offender.
We're all in it together.
We're all in it together. On that note, God bless.
No.